Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Come on now. We drove from D.C. Good morning, everybody. Can I get a hooah? Can I get an airborne? All the way, hooah. I'm Lieutenant General Retired Leslie Smith. Turn me down a little bit. I got a loud voice. I'm the Vice President for Leadership and Education at Association United States Army. We have a great treat tonight. Today we have my good friend, Major General Donn Hill, in charge of the Security Forces Assistance Command, and we're gonna have a great conversation. He has a bachelor's in history from University of Kentucky. Better basketball team than football, hooah. He's been the Deputy Commanding General, United States Army Combined Arms Center, Provost Army University Commandant, and he's also commanded the 2nd Security Forces Assistance Command as a brigade commander. So that means you got a lot of history.
Yes, sir.
Let's join me in a round of applause for Major General Donn Hill.
Thanks. Thanks, sir.
So Donn, how long have you been in your position right now?
Sir, I took command 16 May of last year, so about a little more than 14 months.
Right. So, we have a series of questions that we're going to talk about, but what are you finding as great opportunities for the organization? And you're welcome to talk about the slide that's on the screen or any of the questions from there. So let's start off with an opening comment from you, and then we'll dive into the question.
Okay, thanks, sir. First of all, really do appreciate, as we were talking earlier, the opportunity to tell, we talk about telling the Army story. I spend a lot of my time telling the SFAB story, and that's because the SFABs are like Moby Dick. Everybody's heard of Moby Dick. Nobody's actually read that book.
Right.
It's a old guy, white whale, that end. And so there's a lot of folks that think they know what an SFAB is because, for 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, we were doing security force assistance. We had MIT teams, we had PIT teams,
right.
We had SFATs. So we were doing the mission, and a lot of folks, in this room have done that mission. And so, in 2017, when the then Chief of Staff, General Milley, said, hey, we're going to quit doing this mission in this ad hoc manner, and we've really been doing it since we were, I told the Brits, they taught it to us in the French and Indian War, and then
right.
we, kicked their butts in the Revolutionary War, right? So we've been doing it for hundreds of years, but General Milley said, hey, let's do it professionally. Let's create a purpose-built force that's going to do this. We can sustain the doctrine. We can maintain the lessons learned and the skill sets because, we can rip apart a formation and give them that mission. And it's usually you pull the leaders out, the officers and non-commissioned officers, and then you leave, the rear detachment back there with all the soldiers, and we all know what happens then.
Right.
We can continue to do that, but that's probably not the best way. And it was, really emphasized, as General Brito talked about, this inflection point. Hey, we need to protect those brigade combat teams and those formations so that they can train for large-scale combat operations. So the professionalization of the advisors, which began in 17, has been a pretty interesting evolution over time. And we took the lessons learned from Afghanistan. We were purpose-built for Afghanistan. That drove our .mil PFP across the board. The advisor teams of today were purposely designed to advise at the tactical level, and the XORD said to advise at the CANDAC level.
Okay.
That's the Afghan Army. Mm-hmm. And so that drove everything. So when you look at cross .mil PFP, we were organized, designed, our doctrine was all about COIN and stability ops. But the world has changed, the Army is changing, and so if we could pull up the slide, I like to show folks this slide. There in the yellow phase there, we were built, like I said, purposely for Afghanistan. We did send folks to Iraq as well. But then very rapidly, as we drew down in Afghanistan and the Army transitioned away from that fight and started looking at regional alignment for us and a refocus on large-scale operations,
right.
We spent a lot of time transitioning from that Afghan-centric fight to, okay, hey, what's this regional alignment stuff look like? And that's a lot different than advising a CANDAC in a counterinsurgency. And so we spent a couple of years doing that, getting aligned with the theater armies and the combatant commands, understanding how to get small teams, conventional forces, not SOF, we are not SOF, get these small conventional forces into these countries where there may never have been any U.S. forces before in some cases, or previously it had only been for an exercise for a short period of time. And that took us a while to do. It took the TTPs to do that, the relationships with country teams, the authorities that get you into the fight. It's not a JOA, and so you don't just show up and go to town and start banging targets. You've got to make sure you're there with the right mission. We've got to make sure we're integrated into the theater campaign plan. And so, the secretary, there's a quote there, we are the leading edge of campaigning, and that's primarily because we are there heel to toe in a lot of cases. We're in 30 countries on any given day, plus or minus. The vast majority of those are persistent. So a 6-month rearm cycle on the ground with a partner for a mission, and then heel to toe with another unit from the same brigade that carries on that mission. And that, we'd never done that before.
Right, so you're saying that the same Security Forces Assistance Brigade gets experience and knowledge and cultures and traditions.
Yes, sir.
Over time because of being present.
Yes, sir. And so they're aligned against the combatant commands.
Sure.
So they gain that theater understanding.
Knowledge and expertise.
Absolutely. And I get asked a lot about the language. The language stuff's really hard, and that's, we do what we can on that. But what we do focus on is the cultural aspects of it, because I can teach you a country's culture in English.
Right.
I can teach you about that. And when you're there for an extended period of time, you gain a better appreciation of that, and then that team that is from that brigade can, communicate that back to the team that's coming.
Sure.
And they can build that expertise, and we can share lessons learned. And so it's not this ad hoc, regional line force for a short period of time. And so we've evolved that over time, and that purple phase there, I think we're really good in the competition space. The brigades, the theater armies have learned how to employ us. That was a learning curve for all of us. What's this look like? How do we do this? And we've come a long way. Like I said, we're in 30 plus countries on any given day. But then Ukraine happened, and the Army started looking at, hey, what have you done for me lately that can support large-scale combat operations?
Right.
And so for about the last 18 months, we have really been focused on, okay, in the spectrum of conflict, we are there in the competition space. If that space goes to conflict, what's our role? What does that look like? And when you go back to the .mil PFP, that's been a learning curve as well, because, again, designed, organized, trained, for COIN versus large-scale combat operations. So we spent a lot of time experimenting, figuring out what that looks like. We're now integrated in the Warfighter program. We participated not as a training unit, but as a response cell in 1st Corps and 3rd Corps Warfighters. That helps us learn. So
describe for our audience about the Warfighter. What's going on at the Warfighter so they know?
So, the Warfighter, the Army's premier collective level division and above training event. It uses a war sim, but it brings those larger echelon staffs together. In some cases, more recently with 3rd Corps, bringing in coalition partner staffs as well to train on large-scale combat operations. Right. And so, obviously it's a training environment, but we're in a theater of war that looks a lot like
this place,
Europe
place,
or Asia or those types of things.
And so Security Forces Assistance Brigades are participating or starting to participate in these warfighters?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We've done 2 so far. Learned a lot in the first one. Dialed up our participation in the second one. Got a lot of great support from General Bernabe and the 3 Corps team, because we're on the battlefield. We're there, and so they want to understand what we do and what we can contribute, and then we want to learn and understand. Okay, what are those demands going to look like, and how can we support that? Right.
So we've talked a lot about Security Force Assistance. Can you tell our audience how what the Security Force Assistance Command does fits into that broader context of security cooperation.
Right.
So I think sometimes people are confused about what that is.
That's a good one, sir. And so, you've got security cooperation, which is, building relationships country to country, across the dime, and all of those things. And you come down and you've got security assistance,
Okay.
which is my good friend Brad Nicholson at U.S. Army Security Assistance Command.
Man,
they
right.
work things like foreign military sales, all the things that are in the news, HIMARS and Bradleys and Patriots and that kind of stuff. And then we do the security force assistance, whereas he does stuff, and we work with units and training. And so we are working together so that we can understand, in a lot of cases, if we're working with a nation that's buying a lot of our stuff, the contractors come in, they deliver it, here's buttonology, flip switches, boom, there's your tank, there's your thing. We're then with that unit, like I said, heel to toe.
Right.
And we're like, okay, hey, here's how you fight that piece of kit. This is how you integrate that into your Army.
Okay.
This is how you sustain it. And so that's where we complement that. And again, over time, but also what's really interesting about us is we're at echelon. So we can go down to the tactical level. We can advise down to the company battalion level if that's what the Theater Army wants us to do. But we can also come up to the enterprise level. We work in several countries. We're embedded in their NCOES and their PME to help them with programs of instruction,
Sure.
standardizing their leader development, those kinds of things. But we can also work in their enterprise as far as things like a depot level. So
Okay.
we've got sustainment advisors in certain countries that are at that country's essentially AMC,
Yeah,
and
equivalent,
assisting them with how are they maintaining and sustaining this FMS or whatever else that they've got.
That's good. So let's pull that thread a little bit. So how are you organized? I mean, give us, what do your battalions look like?
Yes. So think of an IBCT, the old IBCT.
Infantry Brigade Combat Team.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. And so 2 infantry battalions, a Cav squadron. They have the exact same manning numbers. So they're the 2 aren't bigger than the 3rd. They're all the same. And then we have, an engineer, a fires, and a sustainment battalion.
Okay.
Everyone is an advisor, though.
Right.
And that's, again, something that folks don't understand. We don't have a Charlie Med, capability in that sustainment battalion, a medical treatment capability. We've got a lot of medics. We've got an incredible competency in our medical skill sets, but it's an advisor formation. The fires battalion doesn't have any cannons,
No cannons
rockets,
there. Okay.
but they've got 13s, artillerymen, from folks that work on a gun line to folks that can work in an FDC, can work in a fire cell.
Okay.
But one of the things that we are learning, to your question, as we really focused on this LSCO fight, is again, if you design a force to go, train Afghans to shoot D-20s, and you're down at the gun line level, and then now all of a sudden you want them to integrate with a NATO-like force, to integrate rockets and support a large-scale combat operations. You want to do airspace management.
Right.
You want to build a COP to support a CFLIC. So, okay, that has some different requirements than if you're working with a force like the Afghan Army. And so, because we have focused on our role in LSCO, because we have gotten engaged in things like the Warfighters, because last night we just flew in from Joint Readiness Training Center,
Right.
we are now integrating into the CTC rotations at Fort Johnson and at Fort Irwin.
Okay.
We are not interfering with the rotational unit, but we're off on the flank with a partner unit,
Sure.
very much like we're going to fight in coalition warfare. That is driving, scenarios and demands on the advisors for us to understand those requirements, which is a lot different than if you're working with a partner and you're running the NCO academies.
So make sure I understand this. So while a unit is executing a Joint Readiness Training Center rotation, you have a partner, allied partner that's physically on the ground at the Joint Readiness Training Center with our advisors participating with them.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So when it's our training,
Yeah,
what I
sure.
just saw, we were training, our advisors were the training audience.
Okay.
we get role players
Got it.
to play the partners. When you know, a theater brings in a foreign partner, those advisors are already trained and validated so
For that location.
so that they
Right.
can focus not on training themselves, they
Right.
can focus on the training for that partner.
That's good.
So that we've got, you know, folks are qualified. We set everybody up for success.
So we talked about your core capabilities. What are some other capabilities that people might not think about, like policing or the rule of law?
Yes, sir. And so, you know, that's interesting. That's back to the understanding the regional alignment.
Sure.
You know, we talk about being the partner or being the advisor that your partner needs. And so there are countries that don't have an army. They have a paramilitary. And that brings certain challenges to us with regards to authorities. And so we can't just come in and start, you know, teaching them, you know, combined arms operations necessarily. We've got to make sure we've got the right authorities, and we've got to make sure we understand what it is that they want us to do. And one of the key things that we bring are, you know, the Army values and, you know, American values, and that's important. Because we, you know, part of our training, both in our assessment and selection for advisors, but also in the individual and collective training that we do in the unit, is we put advisors into difficult ethical situations because, you know, some of our partners want to do things that a value-based Army like us is not going to do.
Okay.
And so when you talk about things like policing, what we call policing in this country compared to policing in other countries, you know, one, do we have the authority to work with that force? But also, as they are doing what it is that they're doing, are they doing it to the standards that we demand of our force?
Okay.
And so we do that. And the same with just the rule of law and
Sure.
again, the law of armed conflict. You know, we are trained in that. We adhere to that, and we make sure whenever they bring something up, that okay, hey, this is the standard. This is how we
do it.
perform.
So as we talked about in our pre-call, tell the audience how do you partner with, collaborate with the state partnership program with the National Guard?
Right. So that is first of all, that's an incredible program.
It is.
And that has been going on since I think the 60s.
Yeah.
And you know, each of the tags, the adjutant generals for the states, have a relationship with countries across the globe that are
Right.
great partners. And so over the decades, they have built relationships with those armies and with those countries that have spanned time, personalities that they've known over the years. They've seen leaders grow. You know, the captain that they worked with is now the CHOD, the
Yeah.
chief of defense,
Yeah.
or the chief of the general staff, and those types of things. So that is a great program that supports, you know, the national security strategy, but also is tied into the theater army and the combatant command strategies. And so one of the things in that purple phase there
Okay.
that we had to figure out was, okay, how do we tie into that? How do we make sure that, you know, we're not redundant, that we're not stepping on each other's toes, that we're not contradicting things? And so we've evolved that because there's sensitivities there, there's relationships, and so we're getting better at that. We always haven't been perfect, but that's something that we're learning to get better with. And next month I'm going to the NAUGUS, all the tags, and
Sure.
we'll talk with them.
Yep.
And a lot of the Guard folks to, again, educate them more on our role and to make sure everybody understands, hey, this is, you know, one team, one fight.
team, that's good.
But there's a lot of folks out there on the battlefield, so to speak. And what we don't want to do is bump into somebody at the embassy and go, hey, what are you doing? You know, why are you here? We want to make sure we know who's there and they know that we're there and everybody's working together.
Okay, good. So a question from our audience. How do you manage the op tempo of your forces? You guys are very, very busy.
That's a great question. And so we're currently on a 6-month rearm cycle. And so it's 6 months in foundational phase where we're building the advisor, getting people in, building that advisor team, getting them to their schooling. You know, they go through the combat advisor training course down at Fort Moore. They do individual training to get everybody to the baseline level because we hire high talent folks, but they may be coming from a non-tactical formation. They may not have been in a tactical unit in their previous assignment.
Right.
And so we baseline everybody, not just on their individual skills as in their MOS and as a soldier, but we also baseline them on things like, how to be an advisor, how to work with an interpreter, the cultural things that we talked about, focusing them on their region. That's the foundational phase. The next phase is the collective phase. So now we're focused on building and validating that advisor team and making sure that we have team cohesiveness, they're capable and the skill sets that they need for the mission. So we do a mission readiness exercise. My team is going to this country to work on this mission, so we validate them for that mission.
Right.
And then we validate what we call the force package, which is the 05 level package that's going to go into that theater for the next 6-month time frame. We take that force package, and that's who I was with down at JRTC. Right. Now, we validate them in a theater agnostic large-scale combat operations environment so that if something happens on their watch, they can flip the switch and they can transition into that LISCO requirement. Because when we speak about the inside force, we're in those 30 countries. We are the inside force.
Okay.
Somebody flips the A2AD, anti-access air denial button, they boom, they hit that. We're already inside that bubble that they've created, and that enables us to enable the theater army and follow-on flow of forces, build up a combat power, whatever needs to happen.
Sure.
Is that?
Yeah, that's good. So, 6 months on, 6 months off is what we're talking?
No, it's 6 foundational, 6 collective,
right.
6 employment.
Okay.
And then
reset.
We reset.
Okay.
Now we are. That's a lot to do in 6, 6, and 6, and so we are looking at expanding that to be more in line with the Army's 8-month cycle. It's going to take us some time to do that, but that'll give us more time. It'll slow the tempo down. It sounds like we're adding more, but we're not. We know what we want to do. We know we don't have enough time to do it in the current time frame. Give us a little more time to do those things, but it'll also give us a little bit more time with our partners, which will benefit everyone.
So can you discuss briefly your efforts of the SFAB efforts in support of Ukraine? Yes, whatever you can say. Say no. Next question. Next question.
Support Ukraine.
Okay, roger that. So let's take this. Let's talk about 2030. How do we see the SFABs in support of the mission set that you're doing in the future? You and I talked about that piece.
Right. And so, going back to the slide, sir, that's where we see really focusing on this balance between the regional alignment and our ability to support large-scale combat operations. So again, we got good, and we are good in the competition space. We are doing that every day. The advisors are crushing it. You talk to a combatant commander, you talk to a theater army commander, they all want more advisors. The Sergeant Major and I have traveled around Europe, Middle East, Africa, and everywhere we go, the theaters want more, the partners want more.
Right.
So in the competition space, we're really good. We got to get better. We got to tweak it based on the needs, and certain theaters have some expansion plans, and we're a finite resource, so they're trying to figure out how they balance it. So we're going to continue to refine that and get good on that so that we can support the theaters and the joint force to build that partner capacity, to increase interoperability, which then supports, if it goes into large-scale combat operations, interoperability is critical to coalition warfighting, and so that is one of the things that we focus on as well. If you look at the doctrine, the doctrine says, hey, that's really what the security force assistance is all about. It's not just the relationships and the access and the presence, but it's also setting the conditions so that if we do have to go to a big fight, it goes back to the whole NATO standard, NATO agreement for whatever it was, logistics, communications, doctrine, those types of things. So we want to build that interoperability with these partners across the globe, so if we do slide into that LISCO, we can fight more effectively together. So that is important that we do that, which means we've got to make sure that we are you know, right there next to the Army as the Army transitions and works on things like, you know, multi-domain operations. We've got to understand Army doctrine so that we can make sure we can bring the partners along to support that, and that they, you know, maybe they don't have the same capabilities, maybe they don't have the same kit, but we've got to work that interoperability. And one of the critical things that we do is assessments, you know, and the chief's always like, hey, will they fight? Donn, will they fight? So we're assessing that. But we've also got to be able to go back to those, you know, corps commanders or division commander and go, hey, this brigade division on your left, you know, based on the plan, when you come out of the blocks and attack, you know, this is the rate of speed you can expect them to sustain. This is the challenges they're going to have, or this is they're going to get ahead of you, or whatever it is. We owe that back to the U.S. forces.
Okay.
So I think that's something that, you know, as you see that purple-green balance, 2030 and beyond, that's where we've got to make sure we're in tune with our partners. We're supporting the joint force and the day-to-day competition, but we're also ready there to flip the switch and support the Army if it slips to large-scale combat operations.
Okay. So what do you see as the biggest opportunities in the next 3 to 5 years for the Security Forces Systems Command?
Yeah. So sir, I would argue that the opportunities that we are seeing with the modernization of the combat training centers,
Yeah.
and the Army's, you know, really looking hard at what we are going to do as an Army to fight and conduct multi-domain operations, the opportunities that presents to us to, one, make sure that we are, you know, linked in with the Army. We are updating our doctrine. We're looking back at that .mil PFP and going, hey, are we organized properly? Is our training right? And that's something that we had to tweak. We had to adjust. We had to get back into the CTCs and the warfighters and make sure we were training to this standard. But then it's also, you know, capabilities gaps. You know, what are the things that we don't have, whether it's kit, communications is critical to our mission. You know, it's one thing to build communications, again, to fight in Afghanistan. You know, been there a long time, very fixed theater, knew exactly what those requirements are, versus potentially dynamic theater inside of an A2AD bubble. So we've got the opportunities to make sure that we are refining our force structure, our organization, our training, and our leader development to make sure that we are tied into the Army. At the same time, I think we have an opportunity to take really quality soldiers, really great NCOs and officers, and make them even better to give them back to the Army. And that's part of our contract. You know, we ask for talent, we get a lot of talent, we give them back even better than when we got them.
That's good. So what's the normal rotation for somebody, 3, 4 years?
The model's 36 months.
Right.
But it really depends. And that's, again, one of the things that we've learned. Some grade plate MOSs can stay longer. Some can't stay that long. A lot of folks get promoted out of the job.
Yep.
So we're working with HRC to refine that and make sure that we don't want anybody to come there and be disadvantaged.
Yeah.
We want it to be an opportunity, a developmental opportunity, so they can do good things.
Okay. So, you know, in the last minute or so where we're here, here's your time for the pitch. I want to become part of the Security Forces Systems Command. I want to be in one of your brigades. What do I need to do today?
Go to goarmy.mil/SFAB. There's a link, there's a questionnaire. You fill out that questionnaire, hit submit. It goes to our recruiting office, and they'll get back to you very quickly. And we will start the process for you to apply. We will get you scheduled for assessment and selection that we conduct down at Fort Moore.
Okay.
And if you make it through assessment selection, we will get you to an SFAB so that you can go do good things and be an advisor. Be all you can be.
Be all you can be. So yeah, last 45 seconds. Anything else you want to share for our team?
So there's a lot of scar tissue from the way we were built.
Okay.
We were built very quickly in a very short period of time at a high cost. And that upset a lot of people. But we were doing what the Army told us to do for a mission that the Army said that we had to execute. And we are now norming how we do those types of things. And so I would just ask that anybody that's got scar tissue from 5 years ago, you know, go finish reading the epic book because we're doing it a lot better than that now,
Right.
and we're still doing a mission that the Army says and the Joint Force says we need to do.
Yeah. Thanks again, Don, for joining us.
Thank you,
today.
sir. Victorious together.
Oh.
Well, thank you very much, Major General Hill, General Smith, for a very great coffee talk. A couple reminders as we set the stage for our next panel. I'd remind you, please visit the Army and FORSCOM kiosks out there and the static displays inside, as well as the helicopters staged outside. We got crews out there with the AH-64 and the AMH-6 and standing in the parking lot in this heat. So please, go out there and pay them a visit. As I get ready to introduce the next panel, and also our Family Readiness Pavilion. That's something new this year at the Warfighter, so I'd ask you all to pay some spend some time with our Family Readiness folks. All right, our first panel of the day is America's Contingency Force, 18th Airborne Corps, and it's moderated by Mr. Jock Padgett, the Chief Technology Officer for the United States Army's 18th Airborne Corps. Mr. Padgett has a Master of Science in Computer Information Systems from Boston University. He's been the Director of Information Technology and Chief Information Security Officer for Pinehurst Medical Clinic and Pinehurst Accountable Care Network. And Mr. Padgett has also served in the United States Marine Corps as a small team communicator. So let's please give our first panel of the day a warm welcome.
I think right here, then we'll shift down this way.
And Jock, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. As previously mentioned, my name is Jock Padgett, CTO of the 18th Airborne Corps. I really appreciate this great turnout. And I want to extend some thanks to the AUSA folks for having us, or having this event here at the center of the military universe. Today we're going to discuss people in warfighting and how it relates to the America's Contingency Corps. So you guys don't want to hear me talk. I got this great panel up here. I'm going to do some quick introductions and then we're going to kind of jump into this discussion. To my left right here is Lieutenant General Donahue, Commander of 18th Airborne Corps in Fort Liberty. CSM TJ Holland, he is the current 18th Airborne Corps CSM and CSM Select for FORSCOM. Then we have Colonel Black. Colonel Black leads our 43rd Air Mobility Operations Group. So we'll discuss their interaction whenever it relates to America's Contingency Corps. And then finally we have over here Major General Retired Anderson. He is the North Carolina Military Affairs Commission Chair. He is also a member of the 18th Airborne Corps, serving as the DCG of the 82nd Airborne Division and DCG of the 18th Airborne Corps. All right, please welcome our panelist members. Thank you. All right, so first we're going to talk, General Donahue, if you could give us, or give the audience, an overview of the 18th Airborne Corps and its contingency force, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the 18th Airborne Corps is really FORSCOM's and the Army's contribution to the contingency force that I'll kind of talk about here in a minute. But it's made up of, obviously 4 different divisions, and then probably the critical sauce of all that, those separate brigades.